Hey everybody, I'm Jason from Fuzzlord Effects, and you are listening to the Fuzz Life Podcast Show. Today, we're going to be talking about the Les Paul and SG guitars and kind of where they fit in the doom metal genre. So, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to the show. I really hope that you will subscribe, leave a rating, and share this episode with a friend if you think they might be into it. Let's get started. So to start off this conversation talking about Les Pauls, I just wanted to mention some well-known people that have used them. Matt Pike from Sleep, or Laurie from Acid King, Greg Anderson from the band Sun, and one of my favorites would be Wada from the band Boris. So if you know someone in a band that you really like that uses Les Pauls, why don't you leave me a comment below and let us know who that guitar player is and like what kind of Les Paul they play. Les Paul's been around for a long time, so it's no surprise that they're really popular in the genre. So let's just talk about some of the things that make a Les Paul good for doom metal music. I think one of the first things that comes to mind with the Les Paul in general is the electronics of the guitar. Les Pauls have two humbuckers, and then two volume controls and two tone controls with a pickup switch selector. One of the coolest things about this type of electronic setup is that we have a volume knob for each pickup and a tone knob for each pickup. So when we have our pickup selector in the middle position, so where both pickups are on, we can actually blend our pickups to taste. So we can like turn the bridge pickup all the way up and get a nice clear treble sound, and then blend in a little bit of that neck pickup to bring in some of the bass. A lot of modern guitars today took their basis of their electronics from the Les Paul using two pickups, two volume controls, two tone controls, and a pickup switch selector. Another good thing about the Les Paul guitars that feature humbuckers, this one has a P90 in the neck, would be that humbuckers are hum canceling. So that 60 cycle hum that we often hear from single coil pickups, as in like we have a Telecaster or a Strat plugged into our amp and we can hear that 60 cycle just hum in the background like the pickup noise. Humbuckers are made in a way that gets canceled out. So a very good thing about Les Pauls that have humbuckers in them is when we're using our high gain amps and our pedals, it's going to reduce that noise a little bit inherent from the actual guitar. Another thing good about Les Pauls, specifically using humbuckers or P90s, is that they have a nice large output signal right from the guitar. What I mean is like a Telecaster, for example, or something with single coil pickups is going to put out a smaller signal right out of the jack. So like 200 millivolts, for example, is about what like a Telecaster would be, versus the humbucker guitars like the Les Paul are going to put out a signal between like 400 and 500 millivolts. So right off the bat, if we're driving our amps or our fuzz pedals, we are giving it a larger signal so we can get a little more gain out of them usually. So another really good thing about Les Paul guitars is that they have a great amount of sustain, meaning we hit a chord and they just ring out for a long time. That's because Les Pauls are so heavy and have a large body mass, and that's because the body is made out of mahogany and it has a maple cap over the top. The downside of that is they often are very heavy guitars. Another good thing about Les Paul guitars that makes a lot of people like them is that they have a 24 3/4 inch scale. So often they just feel really comfortable for people to play just with the way the frets are spaced out. So now that we've talked about some of the great things about a Les Paul, I wanted to mention some of the things that aren't so great about the Les Paul, kind of like common issues that we all run into. And let's start with the thing that I just mentioned that was a good thing for some people. The scale is a 24 3/4 inch scale, which is a little shorter than a Fender scale, for example. The issue we get when running a shorter scale guitar is if we want to use really low tunings, like put it in C standard or B standard or B flat standard, is that the lower tunings don't usually work very well with the shorter scale. If you check out Dunable guitars or other more modern doom metal guitars, they're using like a 25.5-inch scale to increase the scale length so that it increases the string tension a little bit. That way we can still run like normal gauge strings and have a nice amount of string tension while we're down tuning. So again, something I mentioned before was that Les Pauls are extremely heavy. And while that's something that I really like in a guitar, I just like the way it feels. I've been playing them for a long time. A lot of people, that is a complaint, that a Les Paul is just a very heavy guitar, and they often dig into your shoulder when you're wearing them for like an hour playing like a long set or something. So if you're kind of sitting here thinking, do I want a Les Paul or do I want an SG? That's something to keep in mind with the Les Pauls. If you're someone that doesn't really like a heavy guitar, or that's something that bothers you, Les Paul may not be for you. Point on these guitars. And another issue with these headstocks is the way, if you see the G and the D strings, notice how they angle left and right to go up to their respective tuners. The problem with that is that we're putting such a drastic angle on the string right at the nut that this can kind of cause tuning issues, because what happens is the string kind of wants to bind up in that little slot, versus the other strings, they basically have a straight shot from the nut to their tuner that they go right to. So you always hear about G strings, especially like the D string should have the same problem, but it's the G that usually gets it bad. On Les Pauls and SGs can often have tuning issues because of that angle. So you mix that with using a short scale, tuning to B flat standard, and that, you kind of run into some of the very common tuning stability issues that Les Pauls often have. Now, while this is true, I still love mine. I play it all the time, and there's a lot of people that really like these guitars and use them professionally. So don't let that scare you away from the guitar, but I just wanted to talk about that for people that may not have known that. So to start out talking about SGs, let's just mention a few famous people that have used them. The first person that comes to mind is Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath. Someone else I think of is Just from Electric Wizard. And I also think of Garrett from Windhand, who's been playing them for quite a while. So again, if you can think of someone in a band that you really enjoy that plays an SG, leave me a comment below and just let me know who that person is, what band they're in, and what kind of SG they are playing. So some of the good things about SG guitars that are maybe a little different than Les Paul guitars is they're going to be a lot lighter. So they just feel really good. The bodies are going to be a lot thinner, they weigh less, and aside from weighing less, one of the really cool things about them compared to Les Pauls is that they have really great access to the upper frets. That isn't as easy to get up here on the Les Paul guitars. So often what I hear about SGs that people really enjoy is that they're just very, very comfortable, and that is something I really agree with. I really just like the way an SG feels. They often, when you're sitting down playing them, they just sit really nicely in your lap, and they kind of kick the neck out a little bit. And same thing when you're standing up. They just seem like they just sit really well on you, and they're just really comfortable to play. They have the same sort of electronics. They're going to have 2 humbucker pickups, a volume knob for each pickup, a tone control for each pickup, and a pickup selector that is down lower. Personal preference thing, I actually like the pickup selector down here because it's kind of easier for me to get to when I'm playing the guitar, when I'm hitting a chord to change pickups really quick versus reaching up here. Sometimes when I'm playing a Les Paul, I'll hit a chord and actually use my left hand to change pickups. So now let's talk about some of the things about SG guitars that are kind of common complaints or issues that maybe you weren't aware of. So a classic problem with the SGs is that they often have kind of a weak spot at the neck to body joint. The vintage SGs especially had a lot of issues with this. So if you've seen a lot of SGs that are broken right here at the neck to body joint, that's why, because they kind of have a shallow neck pocket. So we drop our guitar, smashes in half. Cool deal about that is I had a buddy that was an amp builder, and he managed to score all these really cool vintage SGs, because a lot of times you can get an SG that has previously been broken and the luthier or someone has repaired it like professionally, and you get a good playing guitar for a lot less price. Another really common complaint about SGs is that the body and the neck weight balance tends to make them neck dive a little bit. Meaning, when we have our guitar on the strap and it's hanging off us, we let go of the guitar and be like, yeah, sweet. The guitar will neck dive often. So a lot of times you'll see people moving the strap button from the back of the guitar to up here on the horn. I've also seen people take the lower strap button and move them up a little bit so that they sit a little differently when you're wearing them with a strap. So just a common issue. That's one of those things that it doesn't bother me very much. And I use a leather guitar strap to kind of combat that. Leather will kind of grip to your clothes a little bit, and I haven't had any problems with my SG, but I just want people to know that that's something that SGs tend to do that Les Pauls don't tend to do. Another common issue with the SGs is, of course, the break angle on the strings. The G and the D strings both kind of bend out from the nut pretty drastically, which can cause issues with tuning stability. Usually on a guitar nut, in ideal circumstances, we want the string laying in the slot of the nut, and as we play our guitar and bend strings, we have a little bit the string can move and stretch in the nut versus being bound up by that angle that's at the top of these headstocks. So if you've already commented below, thank you, but I wanted to pose the question of the week just like every video. As always, I want to know where you're watching from. Even if you've commented that before, I get to know everyone that comments on the channel by where they live and stuff. And feel free to say hello in whatever language that you normally speak if you want to, and I'll do my best to respond the same way. The second part of the question of the week is, I just want to know, do you prefer Gibson Les Pauls or SGs? So if you play a Greco or a LTD or whatever other brand, that still counts. I'm just kind of lumping things into Les Paul and SG. And I'm just curious to know, drop me a comment below. Do you prefer Les Pauls or SGs? I kind of am partial to the Les Paul myself, but I really like the way SGs look and feel. So thank you for listening to the Fuzz Life Podcast Show. I really appreciate you taking the time to tune in and listen. Be sure you subscribe if you want to be notified when new episodes come out. Leave a review and share it with a friend if you found any of this helpful. Again, I'm Jason from Fuzzlord Effects, and you can keep up with me on a daily over at Instagram and at Fuzzlord Effects, or you can check out the fuzzlordeffects.com website, where we even have some Fuzz Life t-shirts posted. Look forward to talking to you again soon.